Nice
Hi,
and hot.
everybody.
Hello.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you all for making it.
It is
We
great to
appreciate
see so many seats here. Matt, who will take over in a minute here, Matt called me when this was set up. He goes, "Great news. We've got the opening slot." And I said, "That's not a good thing." So I am very honored and flattered for all of you who came up. And we're going to have a lot of fun over the next 6 or 7 hours. So
That's not true. We're not going to have any fun. Mike wrote that joke, actually, so I steal it from him as I have everything else. Well, I do want to thank you all for coming. How many of you are actually familiar with who Mike Reese is already? Great.
Oh
So
my
you know how to
God.
pronounce his name correctly. That's good. How many of you have been to JewCE before?
wow.
Nice. We still apparently don't even know how to pronounce it. Is it juice or juicy? We don't know, right? Yeah. Yeah. How many of you hate to raise your hand? Okay. All right. Wonka waka. All right. Enough with the humor. I'll leave it to Mike. So as you guys do know, this is a panel on Mike Reese. We're very fortunate to have him here. He, of course, is one of the lifetime writers for The Simpsons. He has worked on all different kinds of animated franchises like Ice Age. He named the minions from Despicable Me, who, if I'm not wrong, they're named after Simpsons writers, are they not?
Name them after all the Simpsons writers.
Yeah. So Mike's very creative, as you can tell. And he's written for Johnny Carson, Joan Rivers, Gary Shandling, Alf. He even wrote an episode of Charles in Charge, technically.
Don't bury the lead.
And even the Pope. He wrote for the Pope, speaking of Jews.
I'll tell that story.
So he's done it all. I remember when he was writing for the Academy Awards that year. You got a joke in, did you?
I got
Oh,
one
you got
joke
a joke
in the Academy Awards.
Yeah. And if you're ever
anyone's
writing,
interested, I'll tell those stories too.
If you ever are writing for the Academy Awards, wait till you see the bathroom. The toilets are just fantastic. They really are great if the Academy Awards continue. So we're very lucky to have Mike here is the point, and I'm very fortunate to be here as well. For those of you who are wondering who the hell I am, along with some of my pop culture history work, books on Nickelodeon and Comic-Con and other projects like that over the years, podcasts and documentaries and books, I actually was fortunate enough to work with Mike on his memoir, Springfield Confidential, which came out a few years ago. It's been translated in, I think, 10 different languages at this point. Wow. There's an audiobook version as well that is fantastic. And if you haven't heard it yet, get the audiobook. It's very funny. You'll hear from Mike's voice that no one else could really tell Mike's stories like Mike himself, which is why I'm going to shut up now and just get started here and say, let's start from the very beginning. Mike, how does one get involved with writing for a show like The Simpsons? What's the origin of that?
The Simpsons, I got that job because nobody else wanted it. I had been bouncing around in TV for about 10 years when I get a call from, I think, Sam Simon, one of the creators of the show. And he said, "We're doing a show, we're turning The Simpsons, which had been 1-minute cartoons, we're turning that into a show, and we'd like you to work here." And I said, "Why are you calling me?" I said, "You don't know who I am." And he says, "We're calling you because everyone else in town has turned the job down. Nobody wanted to work on The Simpsons. There hadn't been a cartoon in prime time for 30 years, not since the Flintstones." And by the way, when we were starting The Simpsons, we didn't know how to make a half-hour weekly primetime animated show. We didn't know, how do you schedule it? What's the timing on it? How do you hire people? So we said, well, we'll go find we'll find the Flintstones producers and ask them, and they were all dead. So we had to make it up as we went along, and that was it. So I joined the Simpsons. Again, because nobody wanted the job. No one had faith in the process. It was the Fox network, which was brand new at the time, and nobody even knew if it would be there from one year to the next. And so I took the job, and I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. And I was about to get married, and I told my wife, it's work. I got something. This is the best I can get. And the story I've told way too many times is 2 weeks before the show came on the air, I was sitting in the trailer with the other writers, and that tells you something right there. Oh, by the way, the original writing staff of The Simpsons, who wrote, not only wrote such brilliant scripts, they created that world. They created that world of storytelling. They created those 200 characters that populate the show. Except for me, none of those people had ever written a TV script before. That's how pathetic this was. This is how few professional writers wanted to work on the show. We had joke writers, a couple of SNL sketch writers. We had one guy who worked in advertising and was living in his car. That's the caliber of writers we had to choose from. So 2 weeks before the show comes on the air, I said to the others in our trailer, again, Fox wouldn't even give us a real room. They gave us a trailer, and if the show failed, they were just going to back it up to the ocean and drown us all. I said, how long do you think this show is going to last? And everybody had the same answer. They said 6 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 weeks. Back in those days, if a show was experimental and different, it got canceled after 6 weeks. So we had made 13 episodes, and we didn't even think we'd get to show all 13. So we all said 6 weeks. The most optimistic man in the room was Sam Simon, the creator. He says, I think it'll last 13 weeks, but don't worry, no one's going to see it. It won't hurt your career.
And here we are, and it hasn't, has it?
It's been very, very good to me. And, I wrote this book with Matthew, with Matt. I wrote the Springfield Confidential, which is the definitive book on the show. Anything you want to know about The Simpsons, it's in there. Since we did the book 7 or 8 years ago, no one has ever asked me a question where I can't go, it's in the book. I mean, I really made myself obsolete. But now I forgot why I was saying that.
And I will say it actually is important to note, a promotion style here. As many of you probably are aware, being fans of the show, there are many other books and documentaries and things about The Simpsons before we did the book and certainly after. Even the year that we did the book, I think like 3 or 4 other books came out. But it is the only one that's a long-form book from an insider. Obviously, some of the voice actors on the show, Hank Azaria, Nancy Cartwright, have written autobiographies. They're great too, and they mention the show. But this really is the only one where we have an insider from the show. And Mike really has been there since day one, talking about what's going on. So all the other books are written by fans and podcasters and things like that. Some good books too. But if you are looking for the true blue story, Springfield Confidential is it. Backing up a little bit, Mike, we were talking about some of your previous work. I find it interesting because we've talked about this too. And for those of us who are fans of these other shows, you can see it. There was a little bit of different people coming from some of these other projects that you guys worked on before. Not necessarily the news and Alf, It's Gary Shandling show, some of the comedy writing you guys did for Johnny Carson and others. Can you talk about that? And certainly so many coming from, as we all know, the cliche is true, the Harvard Lampoon. So can you talk a little bit about how some of those earlier years of yourself and even some of the other writers, Conan and Al Jean and others, kind of took a lot from those other projects and brought them to The Simpsons?
I can, and I want to bring it in on a Jewish theme, since Jew is so. Yeah. This is the kind of sign that should follow me my whole life. Jew, Jew, Jew. Everybody, and the interesting thing, I look really Jewish. I mean, I grew up in a town where we were the only Jewish family. I was bar mitzvahed. I did that stuff. I'm not very Jewish. I love bacon. I love my Catholic wife. I'm not that Jewish. I'm not Jewish by faith. I'm sort of Jewish by culture, but I'm really Jewish by physiognomy. I mean, even blind people go, "Oh, you're Jewish," Well, happy Hanukkah. But yes, I have the word Jew behind me. When I came into the TV, I'm going to back it up one more bit, which was about 5 or 6 years ago, the Jewish Museum, the other Jewish museum in New York on 92nd Street, had a show on Jews in comedy. And it covered 3 rooms. They even had a couple of clips I had written for Krusty there. But it was so superficial. It was like, here's a 30-second clip of Joan Rivers, and here's 15 seconds of Adam Sandler. And I wrote an angry letter to the museum saying, your show just glossed the surface. It was Jews in comedy was clearly too big a topic for you. Next time, try something smaller like Gentiles in comedy. And I guess it goes for comics, too. I mean, it's something, you're all here, you must know, Jews invented everything. It's one of those businesses, the Jews come in, they built it. You know, I knew they invented, everyone knows, oh, two little Jewish kids invented Superman, and a lot of people know, all right, Stan Lee's Jewish, and the whole Marvel universe is Jewish. I didn't know Bob Kane was Jewish, you know, the creator of Batman.
And Bill Finger, yeah.
Yeah, it's a Jewish business. So it's the same thing. To have a Jewish comic book festival is real. Just say comic book festival. The Jew is implied. So anyway, when I got into TV around 1982, it was on a show, a very well-regarded show called Not Necessarily the News, and the entire writing staff was Jewish. I had a writing partner, Al Jean, who's my partner to this day. Al Jean is an Irish Catholic kid. He went to Catholic school. He was really the token Gentile. He was the only non-Jew on the staff of Not Necessarily the News. And then we went to a sitcom where Al was the only non-Jew. It used to, you know, back in the early 80s, TV was completely Jewish. And by the way, on that show, it was called 9 to 5. It was a sitcom. Al was the only Catholic, and we were the only two writers on the show not in therapy. We had to schedule the entire show around people's psychiatrist appointments, and someone literally said to me, "You're not seeing a psychiatrist? Are you crazy?" So yeah, but as far as 84, still everybody was Jewish. And then I went to the Tonight Show, and that was about half Jewish and half Irish. And what are Irish people but, you know, Jews who drink? And so, and into like 1988, when the original Simpsons staff, you know, Matt Groening, the creator of the show, is a German Lutheran, I think. He's definitely a German Protestant, but you know, he was shepherded in the show by two Jews, by Sam Simon and James L. Brooks, who's really James L. Bernstein. And then that original writing staff of The Simpsons was about 50% Jewish. It was eight people, 4 Jews, 4 Gentile, 4 Irish. And now, if you walk into The Simpsons, we have about 23 writers. There's 1 full Jew left, 1 full Jew, 3 half Jews. And, you know, our numbers are dwindling, and it's not a purge or anything. It's just, again, I think it's a business that we softened up and made legitimate for everybody, and then the Gentiles go, all right. I mean, there's still no Protestants. They're just not funny, but there's plenty of, it looks more like America now.
A lot less Jews, yeah, unfortunately. So one of the things that you do too, Mike, that a lot of you may be aware of, and if you're not, you should definitely check it out when he does it. Mike has the opportunity to speak not only about The Simpsons, but about his career and many of these other shows and projects that he's worked on over the years. And you do have a speaking engagement. We've taken part in some and whatnot on the Simpsons, and not just that the writing staff was Jewish, but there are Jewish themes that come up a lot on the show, and even though the family is obviously not Jewish, they go to church and so forth, they kind of sometimes act in a way and talk in a way that can seem sort of Jewish to some, and you bring it in explicitly on certain episodes where it comes up. Obviously, Krusty is very Jewish, and that comes up constantly. Yeah.
Oh, great.
So can you talk a little bit about not just the staff, but even on the show itself, there are a lot of Jewish themes and ideas and ideals and morals that come up very explicitly often. And even to this day, it still is very apparent. We learned that Superintendent Chalmers is Jewish and that his daughter had a bat mitzvah and things like this. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, bit by bit, we throw in a joke like that says, oh, someone else is Jewish on the show, you didn't know. And I bet Kearney, if you know the three bullies, Jimbo, Dolph, and Kearney. Kearney's the one with the shaved head. He's Jewish too, and I don't know why, we just say it. We didn't plan it in advance, and I'll give you a little history of that, and even backing it up to the fact that all the TV I grew up on in the 60s, all the writers were Jewish, and none of the characters were. There was one Jewish character I saw, I think, my entire life growing up on TV, and it was Buddy Sorrell, Maury Amsterdam on the Dick Van Dyke Show, and he was my role model, you know? He was my Jackie Robinson. I really modeled my life on him, and it worked. I'm that guy. But Jews didn't write about Jews, and it even goes up to The Simpsons. You know, Krusty wasn't always Jewish. There was no Jewish content and no mention of Judaism in the entire first season of The Simpsons. And in fact, kind of an inside story has never been told was, you may know, The Simpsons premiered with a Christmas show. We premiered with our Christmas special, and it's a very dark and gloomy episode. I mean, there's a point where Homer has no money, and they're at the racetrack after hours looking for winning tickets that people have thrown out by accident. It is really grim. And Matt Groening said to Sam Simon and James L. Brooks, "This is Christmas." He says, "Maybe you don't know, this is an important holiday to us." But it worked out. It worked out. That episode went on the air and debuted to the highest ratings in the history of the Fox network. Because when you read these other bad Simpsons books, they'll talk about The Simpsons was slow to find a following and built a cult base. No, we debuted with the highest ratings in the history of the Fox network. It was just a show people were waiting to happen. So again, no Jewish content on the show at all. And then the second year of the show, we had a meeting. This is what we do every season on The Simpsons, where every writer comes in with a pitch. You come in, here's an episode I want to write. And it's salesmanship. You need a little 5-minute pitch of what you want to do. And then if people like the idea, everybody joins in, throws some ideas in. Once we feel it's reached critical mass and it could be a good episode, we bang a gong. We used to get a gong from the Fox prop department, and we'd bang a gong whenever anyone had a good idea. And after 10 years of this, Fox said, "What is this expense we keep getting for a gong?" And so they didn't do that. Now we bang the lid of an ice bucket. But so it was the second year of The Simpsons. We're all pitching our ideas. And Jake Hogan and Wally Wolodarski said, "We want to do an episode with Krusty the Clown as the jazz singer. We want to do Krusty the Clown as the son of an Orthodox Jewish rabbi who is ashamed of him." And it was interesting. It was Sam Simon was very reticent to do it for whatever reason. He didn't like it. He didn't like how it was sort of monkeying with what was canon on the show. He wasn't sure about it. Everyone was on the fence to do it. And then Al Jean, again, the one of the few Gentiles in the room, said, "Hey, maybe Krusty's real name is Krustovsky." And it got the hugest laugh, and especially it got a laugh out of James L. Brooks, the boss of all bosses. It made him laugh so much that, we hit the gong. Hey, this episode is going to go. And that was the birth of Jewish content. It just came in because it's a story we want to do. So boom, we made Krusty Jewish. And then Sam Simon, who had opposed the idea, then ran with it. He really shepherded that episode, and he was the one, had just sort of the brilliant insight. Let's cast Jackie Mason as the rabbi. And Jewish people know Jackie Mason not only is very Jewish, he's too Jewish, he he is from a family of rabbis. He was a rabbi himself for about 3 weeks till he found out what it paid. But so Jackie Mason played the rabbi father, and then the episode ends with a debate between it's between Bart and Lisa and Rabbi Krustovsky on the nature of Judaism and comedy. And to do this, we had 3 rabbis on the payroll that week, and we would call up a rabbi at 3 in the morning and go, "Rabbi, is there anything in Leviticus about clowns?" And you'd go, "Who is this? What?" Hate crime. So that episode ends with the most scholarly debate you'll ever see on Judaism and comedy in a cartoon on Fox. And anyway, we aired this episode, very risky, and then back in the days when phones could light up, our phones lit up. That was I'm going to say it's about episode 22 with The Simpsons. Most popular episode we ever did. People were calling us saying, that episode got me to call my father, who I hadn't spoken to in 25 years. And it's an amazing episode, partly because The Simpsons are barely in it. We made it about a peripheral character, and we found out, it doesn't have to be about The Simpsons, every episode of The Simpsons. So, hugely popular episode, introduced Judaism into the show, and it became a go-to topic for us. Once we had this Jewish character, we had him bar mitzvahed, and we had the Simpsons go to Israel. Typical in Simpsons fashion, we had a great episode where the Simpsons went to Israel, and again, it was written by one of our Irish Catholic writers who'd never set foot in Israel. We had a couple of guys that spent years on a kibbutz. They had no input on the episode, but that's how we parcel them out. And one last thing on that topic is the idea that we do these Jewish episodes. We probably do one a year. We did one about Jewish heaven and Krusty's father dying. Heavy Jewish material. It's almost always generated, and if it's not generated, it's approved by Al Jean. Al Jean, the Irish Catholic patron saint of The Simpsons. Al's the one who loves these Jewish episodes. He's the one that always green lights them, and the Jews are always saying, "This is too Jewish, how are we going to get it?" And he goes, "It's funny." He loves to stick Yiddish in the show. He thinks it's funny. He's, for 36 years, he's going, "Can we do an episode where Bart gets bar mitzvah?" And I go, "He's 10. Learn something." But that's it. He is the source. This one Catholic guy from Detroit is the source of so much of the Jewish content you love on the show.
And if you haven't seen the episode where the Simpsons go to Israel, I have to tell you, it's the laughs per moment of that episode is fantastic. It's really, really a great episode. And like so much of The Simpsons, very prescient, too.
Oh.
Of course, I'm sure you all are well aware of the whole idea of The Simpsons keep predicting things over and over again. I'm going to ask 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll take some from the audience as well.
Let me talk about
please.
the Israel episode.
Please.
Anything I have a canned story for, I'm going with.
Please.
So we're doing this episode where the Simpsons go to Israel, and my one contribution, I wasn't around much for that, was I said, let's get Sacha Baron Cohen to play the Israeli tour guide, because I knew what 98% of America didn't know, which is when he's playing Borat and he's speaking what he calls Kazakh, he's speaking Hebrew. He's speaking it's Hebrew, and it's mixed with Yiddish and I think Lithuanian, but he's speaking Hebrew. So I said, Sacha Baron Cohen knows Hebrew. He should play this Israeli tour guide. So we brought him in, and we'd written the script, and he goes, "This is not a very big part," and we rewrote it to make it a substantial part. And then Sacha Baron Cohen came in and ad-libbed for 6 hours. 6 hours, we couldn't stop him, and we used as much of that in the episode as the episode could handle. The one thing we had to do, we brought in an Orthodox Jew to listen to the takes ahead of time, just because he was speaking a lot of Hebrew, and we said, "Is he swearing? We don't know what he's saying here." So that was it. And by the way, we do a travel episode on The Simpsons every year. We send them to another country. We've done it so much, we're running out of places for them to go. But anywhere we send The Simpsons on vacation, we get in trouble with that country. Our first season, we sent The Simpsons to France, and the French immediately canceled our show and didn't show it again for 17 years. Right. When the Simpsons went to Japan, the Japanese pulled us off the air. When they went to Australia, they were condemned in the Australian parliament. But when they went to Israel, the Israelis loved it. They loved it. You know, I went to Israel for a special screening of the episode, and the president of Israel was supposed to come and attend because he loved the show and he loved that episode. And then some war broke out. That old excuse. So the Israelis have a sense of humor about themselves, which every other country on earth doesn't seem to have. The one side note, the only other country that didn't complain when The Simpsons went there was Canada. I'm sorry. You must be Canadian because you apologized when you did nothing wrong. I'm sorry should be on the flag under the maple leaf. Where are you from? Toronto. What a great, great city. We're all moving there. So,
like I said, one or two more questions, then we'll throw it to the audience here. Mike, you know, you have done so much other things. We are at a Jewish festival, so of course we do need to tell the story of how the heck you ended up writing for the Pope.
Okay, that is a good story. I have a good friend who I'm going to see later today. I have a friend named Ed Conlon. He was a New York policeman. He became a New Yorker writer, you know, that career path. And he is from a big Irish Catholic family. Again, I met him on the Harvard Lampoon. Matt had mentioned that. Source of so many TV writers and policemen, the Harvard Lampoon. But Ed Conlon's from a big Irish family where all his uncles are priests and all his aunts are nuns, and his father is a priest and his mother is also a priest. And I'm at one of his parties, and another priest from Liverpool, priest comes up to me, pulls out his phone and goes, "You want to see the Pope's app?" And I said, "Yeah," because I thought he said ass. But he shows me the Pope had an app called Joke with the Pope, and he said every day a different celebrity comes on and tells a joke to the Pope. And he says it raises money for an orphanage in Venezuela. And I said, how? I said, it's a free app. You don't have advertising. How's it going to work? And he says, the Lord will provide. Okay, so 2 nights later, it's midnight, and I get a call from this priest, and he said, we need a joke. God, I'm forgetting my own story. He said, we need a joke for Al Roker, the weatherman, to tell the Pope. And it's got to be about weather, and it's got to be about religion, and it's got to be clean. I'll call you back in an hour. So here it is. You know, there's 750 million Catholics in the world, and this priest is calling the one Jew he ever met, and that's a good move. So I wrote the joke for him, and then the next night he calls back. Mayor Bloomberg has to tell a joke to the Pope, and the next night David Copperfield, the magician, has to tell a joke for the Pope. And I'm writing, so here I am every night, I'm writing jokes for the Pope for free. You know, that's 2 Jewish sins. And so I did this. This went on for a couple of weeks, and then the call stopped. And I look at my phone, the app has vanished. It went bankrupt, well, because it wasn't making any money. So I thought, all right, well, that's the end of that. That was pretty interesting. And then a month later, I get an invitation from the Catholic Church. They are throwing a party to celebrate the success of Joke with the Pope. And I go to this party, and it is off the hook. This is nuns and priests. You have never seen someone buying drinks like a priest with a pocket full of charity money. They are so drunk, and the nuns are having a wet habit contest, and the priests and the altar boys are doing a conga line, I think, and then the end of the night, they present me with a certificate from Pope Francis, signed by the Pope, calling me a missionary of joy. It's the greatest honor. Thank you.
I've seen it. It's real.
Greatest honor. I mean, I still wish he'd paid me, but but this is the part of the story where my wife is going, don't tell this part, don't. But it's true, because they were drunk, I was drunk too, and I go up to accept this award calling me a missionary of joy. And I did say, I said, well, this is not the first time a priest has put a man in a missionary position. My wife was right. And that's the last time I'll ever tell that story.
And there's more. One more question, then we'll throw it to the audience here. As said, along with the Pope, you've written for so many other things, even during your time and up until recently with The Simpsons and whatnot. How does that actually happen? How does somebody get tapped to help to name the minions from Despicable Me, or to bring jokes to movies like Zombieland, even to work for the Oscars? How does that happen? Because I know that it's happening so many different ways, and not necessarily just an agent or whatnot. So can you talk a little bit about that, especially for people, maybe there are a few younger people in the audience who are maybe comedy writers or aspiring to be. How does that process work, and maybe a story or two about that as well?
Okay, yeah, this is sort of pragmatic stuff. It's not that funny. The way, up until recently, things have changed. The way you break into TV writing is by writing. If you want to write for a sitcom, you have to write a sample sitcom script. You don't write a pilot. You write an episode of, what's a big show now? Young Sheldon. You write a Veep. Every show I know gets canceled, but you try to write a really great. I broke in writing a Golden Girls. I wrote a Golden Girls, and now I am one. And that's it. You write a script that shows, hey, I can write for other people's characters. I can construct an original story, And when I ran The Simpsons, I would read 800 of these scripts every year. I would read 800 scripts to find 8 writers, and they had all been submitted by agents. Someone had already vetted them. They were all pretty good. Everything was a B or a B plus by the time it got to my desk. But I would look for an A or an A plus, and it had to be original and funny and surprising, and it had to sound just like the show. And a lot of people don't do what I did, which was I'd read it all the way to the end. I would read it because there were a lot of scripts that were funny for about 35 pages and then lose it in the last 5 or 6. And I go, no, I need a closer. And if it was full of typos, boom, I don't want them. I want professionals. This is how people get jobs. People don't understand. You got to work. It's a job. It's one of the very hardest things to convince people who are working in comedy is this is your job. We're paying you. You have to come in. You can't come in late. You can't come in hungover. Can't be on your phone all day. I would meet for years. So many people they go, I want to be a writer. I go, what have you written? My friends think I'm funny. It's like, well, go hang out in a bar. I'm looking for writers. And it's the same thing if you want a job at any of the late night shows, you have to do the work. You want to write for Jimmy Kimmel, write a 10-page packet of Jimmy Kimmel stuff. You want to write for SNL, write 5 or 6 sketches and submit them. That's it. You've got to do the work. So, and as I say, I broke in with my Golden Girls script, and an interesting point is you will never get hired at the show you wrote the script for. Every job in my career came off of this one Golden Girls script. And in fact, uh, everybody loved it except the Golden Girls. And we've never hired anyone at The Simpsons off a Simpsons script. It's just the way, you're a little too close. You know your own show a little too well. But that is how you break in. The other tip I want to give any aspiring comedy writers, and this is such a great tip, I so recommend this, is get a Twitter account, go on Twitter, and just post a great joke every day. Try to set a goal for yourself. I want 25 likes on this. I want 50 likes. Put the joke up. If it doesn't get that, take it down and put up another one. And just have to have one good joke a day. If you're a comedian, if you do that every day, at the end of 2 months, you've got a stand-up routine. You've got 60 jokes that 100 people thought was funny. And so do it every day. It's great training. It's great discipline. It's great exercise. And you might get a job out of it. This is how late-night TV shows now find their comedy writers, is off of their Twitter feeds. We've hired 3 Simpsons writers off their Twitter feeds, and they've all worked out brilliant. We've seen they're not just good writers, they're dependable, and they deliver. And I do it too. I'll tell the story, which was for years I would go to presentations like this, and at the end people would come up and go, I follow you on Twitter, and I go, I'm not on Twitter. And finally, after 2 years of this, I go on Twitter, and there I am. It's my name, it's my picture, and it was just some nut. It was just some lunatic out there pretending to be me. I mean, talk about shooting low, He's pretending to be me, and he friended my wife on Facebook, so he's posting pictures from my vacations and things like that. It was so weird, and I would have let him keep doing it, except he wasn't funny. And I said, gee, I think I would be funnier than this guy. And so I tracked him down, and I said, hey, Nut, would you mind if I took over my own Twitter page? And he said, oh, if you think you can do it, man. So look for me on Twitter. I'm at Mike Reese Writer, and I just try and give you a good joke every day. And the one I did this week that kind of took off, it was right after the election. It wasn't even a joke as much as sort of a piece of wisdom. I said, all the people who never saw this coming are now telling you why it happened. Okay.
Mike's Twitter page is really good to check out. Make sure it is Mike Reese Writer, because there actually is another Mike Reese who's a sports writer also.
Oh, yeah.
So you got to, and if you haven't heard it, Mike's got a great podcast also called What Am I Doing Here? He and his wife, Denise, who's here with us today, one of their other passions is traveling around the world. They've been to the North and South Pole. They've been to all different kinds of countries all over the world, and he's done a podcast series about it that's very funny. It's very well produced. There's sound effects and voice actors and such. And what's nice is they're 15 minutes instead of 2 hours of people just getting drunk and laughing and their dogs barking in the background. And it's recently become a book also that he has also. So What Am I Doing Here is worth checking out. We do have some time left, so let's throw it to the audience here.
Here's the book, by the way. I know you can't see it in there. This is the
What Am I Doing Here?
And let me just say, it's a big, beautiful book. It's about our travels to 146 countries. It ends with the story I was telling a lot of you beforehand. It ends with my wife and I, our trip on the submarine down to the Titanic. I was on that sub a year before it imploded. It's a great book. You can only get it on Amazon. It's $37, and that's a deal breaker, especially for my Jewish friends. But it's a big, beautiful book. It's a coffee table book. It's a great holiday gift. It weighs 1.5 pounds, and you could kill someone with this book, but don't do it because they would find you very quickly, because we've only sold about 18 of them. But if you're interested in the book, I have autograph cards you can slip into the book. And I mentioned that because I was on a cruise ship. I also lecture on cruise ships. And a billionaire came up to me and said, I just bought your book. Can I have a free card? And I said, yeah. And then I checked Amazon, and I could see he hadn't bought the book. This man lied to me just to get a free postcard, and that's why he's a billionaire.
And real quick, too, I just have to say, it's actually kind of fun because Mike and Denise travel so much and just his cachet as a Simpsons writer and whatnot. You've actually seen, it's very clear that there have been kind of little inside jokes in other TV shows and whatnot where they're talking and there'll be a character who say, oh, why can't I just be one of those Simpsons writers who travels around the world?
Oh,
or
yeah.
there was a recent Simpsons episode where the Simpsons get involved, they get entrenched in a timeshare situation, and of course at the timeshare meeting there's very clearly an image of Mike and Denise as Simpsons characters in the background.
Yeah.
So it's kind of become this sort of inside joke even in Hollywood that Mike and Denise are traveling around the world in addition to his writing. But let's take it from the audience. Are there questions?
Oh.
Hi, thank you so much.
Thank
I really
you.
enjoyed what you've had to say. I have a question about the Minions, and I got here a couple minutes late, so I may have missed this. But I love the Minions. I love their like hijinks and creativity. And one thing as a woman is that I never see female minions, and I wonder what the conversation has been about behind the scenes about gender and how just like the boys get to be funny. So I was wondering if you could comment on that or if you have any thoughts about that.
That is an absolutely great question that I've never heard. It hasn't come up, possibly because, and the Minions are always in drag. You'll always see when they go on an adventure, they're always dressing. One of them is always dressing like a woman, but it may not have come up just because I think of them as sort of genderless and neutral to begin with, and you can't tell it from voice or what they say because they just speak gibberish. But yeah, and they're always looking for ways to keep that franchise going. So I think if I called them and said, how about some female Minions? They go, boom, that's 3 more bad movies we can make. So that is a great idea. I'll tell you an interesting thing about the Minions and the things that preceded it. I think the birth of the Minions came from the Ice Age movies, which featured this character named Scrat. And Scrat is this silent character. He's this ugly little squirrel rat who's always chasing an acorn and never quite gets it. And the way they're always the most popular parts of the movies. Everybody loves the Minions the best. Everybody loves Scrat the best in Ice Age. And the trick of this is when you make an animated movie, it takes 4 years. And that's 4 years of studio executives meddling in the process, tinkering with the scripts, focus grouping, and all that stuff. Everything with Scrat and everything with the Minions is not in the script. They never see it. They never read it. It's just the animators working on their own, storyboarding themselves independently. And somehow, guess what? The best parts of these movies are the parts that are done with no studio interference whatsoever. So that's the trick behind those. And by the way, so Scrat is always chasing an acorn and never quite gets it. And my wife booked us a trip to Ukraine. She booked us a trip to Ukraine about 5 years ago to visit Chernobyl. Why? Because she's crazy. So we went to Ukraine, and everywhere we went in Ukraine, we'd see statues of Scrat. Every public park would have a booth. They weren't authorized. I'm sure you'd see big statues of Scrat. And I asked the Ukrainian woman, why do you love Scrat so much? And she said, because he teaches children that life is hopeless.
Other questions? How about the young gentleman here in the Rutgers?
So I don't really have a question. I just want to say that you've had an impact on my life because I met you, I don't want to make you feel old, but I met you in 2013 when I was like 7 at a convention in Atlanta.
Oh, in Atlanta at MomoCon.
Yep.
Oh, how great. Yes, I like the beard. Congratulations.
Thanks. You had a contest at the end of the panel for the biggest Simpsons fan.
Yeah.
I ended up winning it.
Oh, I kind of remember this. Isn't that unbelievable? How'd you win?
I don't remember what question I asked, but I remember that I got an autographed script and some other little goodies. But like, I tell that story to everyone.
Oh,
like
how great.
that's one of the best memories that I've had.
How lovely. Well, thank you for telling me that. You know, this is a gift to me. Nobody wants to see a writer. It's nobody. I mean, it's just the fact. It's an old Hollywood joke about, did you hear about the actress who was so stupid she slept with a writer? And people just want to meet the stars. And, but, Homer can't come to the Jewish Institute. And, Lisa Simpson can't give a commencement address. And so I'm so glad I get this opportunity, that people are, and that they respect the writing. And I mean, it's gotten to the point where I get recognized, which I never thought would happen in my life. And man, what an ego boost. You can't pester me enough. I really love it. So me and all the writers are just so grateful for the attention we get, and the people like our work. How about the lady in the hat?
That's a shiksa who was raised on Mel Brooks.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could address the Tracy Ullman. Her show opened with The Simpsons, and she said, "I think The Simpsons are going to eclipse me." Did she really say that?
I don't remember that. By the way, you're not Jewish, are you sure?
Yeah.
No? You did 23andMe? You did the whole, okay. Okay. And you're wearing a hat for no reason. So, okay. The Tracy Ullman story, it's a pretty great story. When the Simpsons started out, or The Simpsons, I'm sure most of you know, started off as 1-minute cartoons on the Tracy Ullman Show. Now, I told that story about getting a call to write for the Simpsons TV show. At the time, I was working on a show called It's Gary Shandling Show, which was the next to the lowest rated show on TV. The critics loved it, which meant the public hated it. So we were number 99 out of 100 shows on TV. The only show lower was the Tracy Ullman Show. Dead last in the ratings. And the Tracy Ullman Show had this brilliant woman who would do 3 sketches a week, playing 3 different characters. But nobody could tell where one sketch ended and the next one began. It was all Tracy Ullman. And so they said, we need something to break these up. And they used to show circus acts. People don't know that. Before The Simpsons came along, they would just show a juggler for a minute. And it was so weird. But then there was a local cartoonist, underground cartoonist, Matt Groening, who did a cartoon called Life in Hell. And it was brilliant. Everybody knew it. Everybody loved that cartoon. And Matt Groening, as I mentioned, is not Jewish, but his wife was. And she pushed him into becoming an empire just off of Life in Hell. He was selling a lot of stuff like that. So they said, hey, how about 1-minute cartoons to break up the Tracy Ullman Show? So they call in Matt Groening, who, again, a well-known local figure. And his agent had told him what agents always do. He said, they just want to meet you. They just want to shake your hand. So he comes in for this meeting, and 5 minutes before the meeting starts, someone leaned out the door and said, we're very excited to hear about your new project. And Matt didn't have a new project. So in 5 minutes, he created The Simpsons. He drew them all. It's very interesting. There's this original sketch he drew in the waiting room for the meeting, a very rough-looking version of the Simpsons family. He doesn't have that. I know the woman who got fired from The Simpsons, and she made off with that original drawing. I can't imagine what that's worth, but she's got it somewhere. I think she moved to Finland, but she's got that somewhere. So he sketched it out and invented it all in 5 minutes. And I mean, the trick to that story is the fact that Matt Groening's parents are named Homer and Marge, and he has sisters Lisa and Maggie, and I guess he's Bart, and he's never said where that comes from.
There's some theory that Bart is an anagram of Brat.
Brat.
That might have something to do with it, but
No, here's my theory:
Yeah.
is Matt loves to talk about his sisters Lisa and Maggie. He never mentions his brother Mark.
oh, there you go.
So I think Bart is Mark, but I don't know a thing about Mark. He's off the radar.
And a lot of the other characters on the show, especially earlier on, are named after streets and such over by where he lived in Oregon area as
That
well,
is
right?
that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. When we were creating the show, we had to come up with everything as we needed it. So we go, all right, we need a name for the Reverend, and Matt would go, Lovejoy. Okay, we need a name for the mayor, Quimby. We need a name for the police chief, Wiggum. And I go, he's a genius. I was so dazzled for him to come up with these kind of, quirky but not funny names. And then I go to Portland, Oregon, where he's from. It's just one street after another. He never even left the downtown area.
Let's do maybe one or two more questions, and then I think we got to wrap up. The woman in the hat, and then the woman down here.
Thank you. I saw what you were doing with the hat, so thank you. The Simpsons helped me raise my kids. Thank you so much for that. Are you saying that when you gave in your Golden Girls spec script, you didn't do it to the Golden Girls? You did it to another show? Is that
No.
what I understood?
No, you just pick a show, you write a sample episode for it, and it's purely a sample, and you want to make it readable, so you write a show that exists. So I wrote when I told you I would read 800 scripts a year, 500 of those were Cheers. I just had to read 500 Cheers scripts, which isn't as onerous as it sounds, because Cheers is a good show, and if you wrote a good episode, good script, it would be funny. So I wrote a Golden Girls, and it was Al Jean who was so smart about it. The Golden Girls had just come on the air, and by the third week, it was the #1 show on TV, and Al Jean said, let's write a Golden Girls, because the people who read these things won't have a ton of Golden Girls. It'll be fresh. And we know the show will be around for at least 5 or 6 more years, so our script will still be viable for 5 more years. This is why it's so smart to work with a math major as your writing partner. He's just this brilliant, brilliant guy. He's been my best friend since college, great partner, great showrunner of The Simpsons.
And if you haven't watched it before, not recently, I would actually highly recommend it. They show it definitely on Hulu. I don't know where else it is, but I've been rewatching Golden Girls, and they are so clever.
They're so great.
And funny and really well done. Obviously, the acting is terrific. But yeah, if you're looking for something outside of the box right now or whatnot, I would highly recommend Golden Girls. One other thing I will say is one of the only hard things about being friendly with Mike and over the years, some of the other Simpsons people like Al Jean, who's always great, and some of the others that I talk to is, a lot of times you can't pitch ideas or whatnot to the shows that you want to pitch to because of licensing issues and solicitation, all these things. So, I learned very early on to be like, oh, Mike, you guys should do an episode on this, or a friend of mine had made this joke or whatnot, and whether it's you or Al or whatnot, it's like, nope, tell me whatever you want. It just can't be about The Simpsons.
Yeah, don't tell me your Simpsons idea.
Yep. So that is it's true though. It's an important point for that. And I have friends, Bob's Burgers and other things like that. Even when we're just shooting the shit or something like that, excuse my French, they'll say, oh, don't talk about the show, or if you have any ideas. So something to keep in mind. I think the woman here had a question.
Thank you. At what point in the creation process did you bring the voice cast online, and how much did that contribute to the kinds of characters? Like, did you build characters around the actors?
Absolutely, great question. I think we may end with that. I have a little something to say. Matt Groening had written these little 1-minute scripts. They're probably a page and a half long for the 1-minute shorts. And then they didn't even go to casting. I mean, they said, maybe we can use the actors from the Tracy Ullman show to do the voices on this cartoon. So Dan Castellaneta and Julie Kavner were there at the Tracy Ullman show, so they became Homer and Marge. They offered Marge to Tracy Ullman. They said, don't you want to play Marge? You want to play the wife in these cartoons? And she said, I have too much to do. I'm too busy to give you this extra half hour a week. Now, for those of you who don't know it, the actors on The Simpsons each make $10 million a year. Each of them makes $10 million a year. That sounds like a lot of money, but you got to remember these people work 2, sometimes 3 hours a week. They make $40 a second. That's the job that Tracy Ullman turned down. So that was it. We had Marge and Homer were just cast members on the show. Lisa, Bart and Lisa, who are all the only other characters in the shorts, we just hired them as voice actors. They auditioned. Yardley Smith, the voice of Lisa, actually auditioned for Bart, and Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart, auditioned for Lisa, and they made the switch at the last minute. And even when the show started up, you know, when we had our 6 core members, 3 of whom are Jewish, our 6 cast members who have been the same cast members since day one. When the show started up, only one of them, only Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart, had ever done a cartoon before. Everyone else, this is their introduction to animation work. So just like our writers had never written a script, our voice actors had never acted.
Does anybody have maybe one more very quick question? And then we do need to wrap it up. So maybe the woman here, and then we really got to wrap it up.
I like this lady.
Yeah.
Do you also work on Futurama?
I do not work on Futurama. I wish I had, because their offices were 3 blocks from my house. I would have been, back when I lived in L.A., I would have been the only man in L.A. who walked to work. They just didn't have a budget. They didn't have a budget. They didn't have enough money to hire me. I'm also not smart enough to work on that show. There was a job, you know, when you worked on The Simpsons, there's a pretty bright group of people. If you were too smart to work on The Simpsons, you went to Futurama. And all those guys have advanced degrees. They have PhDs. There's 2 of them were professors. One guy had a doctorate in chemical engineering. If you're too smart to work at The Simpsons, you worked at Futurama. If you were too lazy to work at The Simpsons, you went to King of the Hill. And I'm going to end here on the weirdest note you can possibly imagine. And don't let anyone get you down. My mother died 1 hour ago. 1 hour ago, and she would have loved that I'm doing this. I could have canceled, but you know what? You know, when you're funny for a living, you're funny all the time. And I think I'm holding up well. I think this is wonderful therapy just to talk to all of you. And I think she would have loved this. She supported me. Thank you. Thank you. She was, you know, my father was so against me going into this as a career. And even, 10 years in my career, I'm writing for Johnny Carson, and he said to me, "Have you considered a career in cryptography?" I said, "No, Dad." But my mom was so supportive. She loved comedy. She loved that I was writing. There's an awful lot of her that turns up in The Simpsons. She would have been so proud and happy. And if I'm up here today talking to you, it's because of her. So thank you all.
Thank you all for coming. And again, Mike has cards for What Am I Doing Here? Honestly, I will tell you right now, I make them. I don't really listen to podcasts. I listen to every episode of What Am I Doing Here? They're funny, they're smart, you learn a lot, they're really well produced, and they're 15 minutes, which is great too. And he's got the book. It is a beautiful book. And we'll be around for a little bit as well. So check that out. And thank you all again for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.